That flash flooding, it completely destroyed it. There is nothing left. There were 200-year-old trees that were uprooted. The plumbing of the RV park completely uprooted. And on the river, there were slabs of concrete. There was even a car wedged between the downed trees. So as you can imagine, this is adding more difficulty to those search efforts, especially if the people that are on the ground have to clear out because of the threat of more flooding. That further delays the possibility of finding people hopefully alive.
All right, we just got a new update as a result of the Texas flooding. The death toll now has risen to 80. 10 campers remain missing, as well as one counselor. The White House response to the flooding, President Trump has signed a major disaster declaration for Kerr County. That happened earlier today. CNN senior reporter Betsy Klein is now with us. So, Betsy, you're traveling with the president who's been spending the weekend in New Jersey. What else are you hearing?
Well, Frederica, the scope and scale of the devastation that we are seeing from our teams on the ground make clear that this is going to be a very challenging response and recovery process that's going to require state, local, and federal governments to work very closely together. So we are starting to get a sense of what that federal response is going to look like. President Trump saying that he has signed that major disaster declaration. He said in a post to social media, quote, "I just signed a major disaster declaration for Kerr County, Texas, to ensure that our brave first responders immediately have the resources they need. These families are enduring an unimaginable tragedy with many lives lost and many still missing. The Trump administration continues to work closely with state and local leaders." Now, according to the Department of Homeland Security, this means that FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, has been activated. They are going to help with the recovery efforts as they try to rebuild in this community. FEMA is going to pay about 75% of the cost of those recovery efforts, as well as the U.S. Coast Guard, which has been on scene for search and rescue efforts over the last several days. There are 2 U.S. Coast Guard helicopters along with 3 fixed-wing aircraft with infrared imaging. That, of course, is such important technology as they look to track any kind of movement among all of this debris. But state and local leaders in Central Texas have said that so far they are getting what they need from the Trump administration. Of course, we continue to track that. But as we track the federal response to this flooding in its 3rd day of recovery efforts, there are a couple of important questions to follow here. Number one is the National Weather Service. This is the agency that is responsible for the country's weather forecasting. They issued a series of alerts on Friday in those very early hours, saying there is going to be life-threatening flooding. Now, it's unclear how many people they were able to reach with those warnings. We heard in that news conference that there are some people that didn't even have cell service where they were, who were impacted. It's also the middle of the night. What's also unclear is whether cuts to this agency impacted how those warnings were disseminated. But President Trump here in New Jersey, he's expected to leave in the coming moments. We'll be tracking whether he weighs in any further. Frederica.
Right. Betsy Klein, thank you so much for that. And of course, everybody wants to help in whatever way they can. So for more information about how you might be able to help the Texas flood victims, go to cnn.com/impact or text FLOOD to 707070. All right, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm Frederica Whitfield. The CNN Newsroom continues with Erica Hill.
This is horrible. So bad. We've never seen it this bad before. We've had flooding, not to this extent. It's a catastrophe.
It was going up to, we had bunk beds in our cabins, and it was going up to the top bunk, and we had one choice, and we had to swim out of our cabin.
But on the way here, we saw all of the other camps destroyed, obliterated.
The devastation, there are just no words.
This is when we need to come together and help each other out.
There's a cat in there.
This is CNN Breaking News.
Thank you for joining us as we continue our special breaking news coverage of the catastrophic flooding in Texas. I'm Erica Hill in New York. Officials now say at least 80 people are dead and at least 41 people are missing across central Texas. In Kerr County, the area that saw the worst of the flash flooding, officials say now 68 people have been confirmed dead, among them 28 children. Our CNN crews on the ground in Kerr County have been receiving emergency alerts in just the last hour. The concern at this moment is the risk of more flash flooding as the rain in that area picks up. Texas Governor Greg Abbott, a short time ago, talked about those concerns as he was also warning people to stay off the roads.
There's more heavy rainfall that's expected that will lead to potential flash flooding broadly in these regions. The Big Country, Concho Valley, Central Texas, and once again, Kerrville. A particular threat for people who are driving on roadways. Some of the lives lost in Central Texas were people who were swept away in vehicles or in similar crossing type situations. Know that rising water on roads can occur very rapidly. You may think you could drive through it only to find out when you're in there that it's too late.
Hundreds of emergency responders and volunteers are working around the clock as they continue to search for survivors. They are looking, of course, in trees, under bridges, all along the riverbanks of the Guadalupe River. Many of those survivors, as you see in some of this video here, have been airlifted to safety. And there is, of course, hope to find more survivors. Local and state officials have at this point also recovered a number of bodies, they say, that have yet to be identified. 10 campers, meantime, and 1 counselor are still among the missing from Camp Mystic. That is the all-girls summer camp that was hit so hard by these powerful floodwaters along the Guadalupe River. That's in the town of Hunt, Texas. You see some of the aftermath there of what happened at the camp, where more than 20 feet of water. That water rose more than 20 feet in less than 2 hours. CNN's Isabel Rosales joins us now on the phone. So Isabel, I mentioned just at the top of the hour that you are among the CNN crews, of course, there on the ground who've been getting these emergency alerts. You actually had to scramble now for a second time because of some flash flood warnings. Give us a sense of what you're seeing, where you are, and what that was like even just in the evacuation process, because obviously you're around a number of other people as well getting those alerts.
Right, and what a large evacuation process that was, because I've been on the ground here all day with these volunteers. You're talking hundreds of volunteers searching through the Guadalupe River, the tributaries that feed into the Guadalupe River. We didn't know anything was wrong until we saw a Kerr County Sheriff's deputy with the lights turned on, just rushing up and down the road, telling people over the speaker, hey, you need to leave, get away from the river, get out of the road, leave right now. And I started asking people what's going on, and that's when they told me a wall of water is coming from up north. The water is building, and that's when we got the emergency alert telling people to move to higher ground. High confidence of river flooding at the North Fork of the river. People aren't taking their chances, and that's exactly the phrase that I got from a firefighter there, that based on what happened here in this community, how it was devastated on Friday overnight, they're just not going to take that chance. So when the law enforcement say leave, they leave. I had several other volunteers from Centerpoint, from Comfort, all over here in Central Texas, calling me with that same information. So it's clear that all in this area here, they have been evacuated. And as I'm speaking to you, Eric, I did follow the United Cajun Navy. We're at an area here where rescuers are still operating. I see law enforcement. They're checking out a mobile home that they're not sure what the situation is there. Maxine, my producer's up there kind of taking a look, and they told him to step back a little bit. So they're assessing that and whether anyone might be inside right now. But it's just been a massive effort. You're talking about a large body of water, multiple communities impacted. Volunteers have come out with everything that they've got, dogs, ATV, horses even, going through this rugged, rural, rough terrain with debris, barbed wire, fire ants, all sorts of dangerous stuff all around them, slugging it out through the mud, trying to flip over heavy tree limbs and trying to see if there's anyone there who was taken away by the currents of this flood water. And you have loved ones wanting to know what happened to them, and they're trying to give them that closure. And in fact, I had Fred Hernandez, a resident of Bernie, Texas, telling me you're searching for something you hope you don't find, but at the same time, you have family members who are missing. You hope that there are people out there looking for them, and if you can give them that closure, then that counts for something. So this is what is uniting people, no matter where they're from here, looking for that closure for someone else, a stranger. But this is all uniting them, and they're not going to stop day or night unless, of course, they're evacuating. But they told me they're going to be right back here tomorrow.
Yeah, it is a massive, massive effort. Isabel, really appreciate it. Glad you and your team are safe. I also want to bring in Ed Lavandera. He is in Ingram, Texas. Ed, you were also evacuated, and I know it was pretty busy on the road as you were trying to get out of there.
It was. We actually happened to be right at the spot where that North Fork of the Guadalupe River connects with the Guadalupe River. And that is where, similar to what Isabel experienced, that we just saw this, all the authorities frantically urging people to evacuate the area as quickly as possible. And it created a long line of cars of people that were driving from Hunt all the way to Ingram. On Highway 39, has dissipated substantially, and is, you know, the river is down there in the distance, but haven't seen any real change to it just yet. So, but clearly there's a great deal of concern about what the rainfall that has been taking place a little bit to the north and west of here, and what that's going to mean for the tributary levels and the river levels here in the coming hours. So obviously those warnings going out for a great deal of that concern. Part of the traffic that we saw leaving the area, Erica, were also a lot of the power crews that had been fixing power lines throughout the day. There's been in this particular area of Hunt, which is just several miles downstream from Camp Mystic, and this is a stretch that we have seen for the last few days, has been some of the areas that have been most intensely searched for victims of this flooding. And obviously we can't say with any certainty right now exactly what's going on with that, but I presume that much of that has come to a halt for the time being, as they wait for these rainstorms to pass through and for the dangers and the threat of flooding to dissipate as well. But there was moments there where it was just kind of a frantic effort to get people evacuated from those areas as quickly as possible. Erica?
Yeah, understandably, and important to follow those alerts, of course, as we know. Ed, really appreciate it. Thank you. We'll continue to check in with you. As the days pass, we are hearing a number of, frankly, just harrowing stories coming out of this tragedy in Texas, stories of survival. Joining us now is one mom who, with her 4 children, was camping in a campground in Kerr County. Amanda Sue Jones is with us now. Amanda, I know this was a long, very difficult night for you and your family. Just first of all, how are you doing? How is everyone doing today?
We're all still in shock and still replaying in our minds, what could we have done differently? Just basically just going through the trauma of it, just hoping some of those people that we saw in distress were saved.
You and your family were able to get out. As I understand it, your husband basically, who's from Kerrville, I believe, just stayed up all night, kind of watching. Oh, from Ingram, kind of watching the water levels. What was that moment like when he said, "That's it, we've got to go"?
So I knew that we were receiving the alerts, through our devices, and we just kind of, were used to it. But we were so close to a fork of the river. We were about 20 yards where our tent was set up. And it was raining throughout the night. So, not all of us wanted to be out there. Otherwise, my kids would have been out there fishing all night. But basically, my husband would get up, and go check the water, and I would listen for him. None of us really slept. I'd listen for him to come back in, and I was just kind of waiting for him to be like, "Let's go." And then once the water kind of started coming over the bank is when he came in and said, "We need to go now." And it was just the whole family just immediately went into, "Let's just get out of here." One of my sons grabbed all the dogs. I grabbed the 2 smaller children. We even had 2 little orphan ducklings with us that we threw in a bucket and packed with us, that we had brought from home. But we basically, and just my oldest son is amazing. He just immediately started throwing stuff into the vehicle and the trailer. Of course, we weren't able to get, all of our stuff, but that's doesn't matter to us at this point.
Yeah.
We just basically all mobilized. And once my husband said it's time to go, we were like, okay, if he said it's time to go, then it must be serious.
Yeah. And I know you've camped in this spot before. There was, I think, maybe a little bit of flooding last year. Nothing, obviously, like this. Once you were
Right.
able to get safely to higher ground with your family and the animals, you encountered some pretty rough moments, as I understand it, in what you witnessed.
Yes. Yes. And I think we pulled out of the campsite and we parked at, we were still on the island, what we thought was higher ground, but then the kids needed to use the bathroom. So we're like, we're going to go up to the headquarters of the camp. So we crossed over the little bridge and went up there, and everything seemed pretty calm for the most part there. And we saw some flooding. A kayak had, gotten swept away from somewhere. We saw that. But nothing crazy until after we had used the facilities, and you just hear mayhem hit. The first sound was just the sound of the campers and cabins just crushing against each other. That was the first of it, and that's what caught our attention. So I immediately went to our stuff, went through all our belongings, found PFDs, life jackets for all the children, and said, put this on. Immediately, told them, everybody put this on. My husband was already going and seeing what he could do to help, so it was me and the kids at that point. And then you start hearing the screams for help, and then a gentleman had come out of the bathroom and was saying his family was still in, and his family was down there, and at this point it was such a matter of minutes before the water rushed in and created this raging river just right there, within where the campers were. It was just immediately like just a whole new river there.
So he had this gentleman had come up to use the facilities himself. His family
Yes.
was still where they were camping, and
Yes.
and in those few moments, the waters just overtook that area where his family was.
Yes, it was so fast. It was unreal. Like I said, we stayed in this area last July, at the end of July, when it flooded before, and it was just kind of slowly rising, but this was just like nothing I've ever seen. It just happened so fast, and it was just so devastating. And just the cries for help, and somebody was asking for a rope, and I sent my oldest son, with a ratchet strap, because I was like, this is all we have. Like, I'm just scrambling through our belongings, looking for anything to throw to him. And I don't think that it was of any use, but we tried.
Yeah, I mean, that's all you can do. You paint such a difficult picture, right, of hearing these screams and
Yes.
hearing just the strength of that water around you. Could you see anything at this point? Some of the videos I've seen are so dark that I imagine that too. I mean, that adds to the horror and to the unknown of the moment.
Right. It is like you didn't see it coming, and that's like probably the worst part for all of us. Is that's what we're, as a family, that's what we're dealing with, is the stuff that wasn't caught on camera. Is I'd seen the family. I just remember a man. I don't remember anyone with him. He made it through the water, and he was up to like waist deep water, and then a camper, probably like a over 30-foot camper, is just being taken like it's nothing, and it ran into him, and I didn't see him afterwards. And it's just moments like that weren't captured, that you see these people are trying, and it is just the devastation, and the power of the water was just, I mean, it was moving these cabins like they were nothing.
Yeah. And I mean, for people who have never been to this area, can you give us a sense of, you were down, you mentioned you were near a fork in the river, you were tent camping, but the fact that there were cabins, how big is this camping area, and how close would some of these other spots, right, whether they're cabins or tent camping or even an RV, how close would they have been to the water?
Oh, the cabins are pretty close to the water as well. The only thing is where the campers are, I don't think that from their vantage point, I don't think they could see the water where the campers are, because the cabins take up the waterfront. And then just kind of like the way the water rushed in, like, of course it was pitch black, but
yeah.
Even if someone walked out, unless they walked down to the water, I mean, they just didn't have the viewpoint of the river like we did.
Yeah.
Or how the cabins do.
They would have had no idea. And to your point, just how quickly
Right.
that water rose. The way you and your family scrambled, though, saved yourselves, and were trying to help others. Obviously, a testament, but you have 4 kids. Correct me if I'm wrong on their ages, but I believe 17,
Yes.
12,
Yes.
5, and 4.
Yes.
So I know you said everyone's still processing things. That's got to be that's a lot, especially your oldest son you were mentioning was out helping.
Yes.
Are they talking about it at this point?
Oh yes, and we've tried to talk about it, but it just spirals into what should we have done differently? What could we have done differently? Like when we, pulled up to the bathrooms, like if we would have started honking and screaming or anything, like, but then if we didn't, then we would have kind of been the bad guys who woke everybody up for nothing. It was so hard to tell. Like when we crossed the bridge, we couldn't even see into the darkness.
Yeah. I mean, you have no
we
idea
just
what's
saw the
happening in that moment.
No.
Your husband's from Ingram, and
Yes.
it sounds like you spent a fair amount of time in this area as well.
Yes.
How is he doing? I would imagine he may know some other people who were affected.
Oh, for sure. And I think mostly he wants to. He wished he could do more for the city of Ingram and go. Wish we would have stayed to help out. But with the small children, like there's just. There's not much we could do, but he's definitely impacted and seen just places that, since the floodwaters haven't gotten that bad in so long, just seeing the devastation.
And the alerts continue. The governor just saying a short time ago, just in the last hour or so, how concerned he is about more weather that may be coming. Do you still have family? Does your husband still have family in the area?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And they're
yes,
okay?
And he's been communicating with them and making sure they're safe. And I think everyone's pretty devastated there as well.
Yeah, understandably. Amanda, this is it's a lot for anyone to go through. Thank you for taking the time to share your story with us and also to give so many people who are not familiar with the area just an understanding of how quickly this happened and how difficult it was in those moments, because so many people I know trying to wrap their head around it as they also are trying to wrap their arms around you and so many others from afar. Thank you again for taking the time, and keep holding those kids tight. We are back with our breaking news coverage of the deadly flooding in Texas. We can tell you at this hour, at least 80 people are now confirmed dead. Dozens remain missing. We are also getting new video from Friday, which shows the Coast Guard here pulling victims up out of raging floodwaters near Kerrville, Texas. CNN correspondent Lee Waldman is in Kerrville right now. Lee, we also just heard from local officials. What more do they have to say, especially as we're in the middle of these alerts, as I understand it, that are coming right where you are?
Erica, good to be with you. Yeah, the rain is already starting here. We've heard some cracks of thunder in the area that we're in now. But the biggest piece of information coming from the officials in that press conference that wrapped up just a few moments ago, they talked about those missing campers from Camp Mystic that we've been focusing on for several days now, ever since those floodwaters started to rise early Friday morning. 10 girls are still missing. One camp counselor is still missing at this point. Obviously, those search and rescue efforts are continuing. But Erica, it's important to put into context, that's not the only camp that sits along the Guadalupe River there. There's about a dozen or so other camps that are in that area, and nearly none of them evacuated out, despite there being National Weather Service warnings issued on Thursday afternoon about flooding concerns. It's something that we asked city officials about. Take a listen.
Families here, we know that there was a National Weather Service alert issued on Thursday afternoon talking about these flood watches and issuing Cook County as a high-risk area overnight. Why not preemptively evacuate these camps? You said earlier that was a good question. Did you get to the answer?
Yeah, no, again, it is still a great question. And when you looked at the National Weather Service notification, when you look at that map showed Kerr County kind of in the northeast corner, and that spread all the way through San Angelo. So there's a lot of information. That's a wide area that must be addressed. And so as we were, preparing for it, unfortunately, the rain hit at the most inopportune time, and right in the most inopportune areas where the North and South Fork hit. It converged, and so here we are. So again, we want to continue to focus on those rescue operations, and at that, we're not taking any more questions. Thank you.
Now, you see right after that, they cut off the questions, only allowing 4 to be asked after that press conference happened today. But people here want to know why there were not evacuation orders.
Lee, I'm going to interrupt you for just a moment. The president is speaking. Let's listen in.
We'll continue to be there, and we're working very close with representatives from Texas, and it's a horrible thing that took place. Absolutely horrible. So we say God bless all of the people that have gone through so much, and God bless the state of Texas. It's an incredible place. Any questions, please?
President, are you still planning to phase out FEMA?
Well, FEMA is something we can talk about later, but right now they're busy working, so we'll leave it at that. Go ahead.
For the trade letters that you're sending out on Monday, Secretary Bessent said that it would be a 3-week extension and that rates could go back up to the April 2nd level on August 1st. Is that what we should...
We're sending letters out on Monday having to do with the trade deals. It could be 12, maybe 15. You know, Secretary of Commerce right here. And I guess, Howard, I would say it could be maybe as many as 15 or so. And they'll be going out on Monday, and some will go out on Tuesday and Wednesday, and we've made deals also. So we're going to have a combination of letters, and some deals have been made.
Your reaction to Elon Musk starting a third party?
I think it's ridiculous to start a third party. We have a tremendous success with the Republican Party. The Democrats have lost their way, but it's always been a two-party system. And I think starting a third party just adds to confusion. It really seems to have been developed for two parties. Third parties have never worked. So he can have fun with it, but I think it's ridiculous.
President, what's your golden key back from Elon?
Go ahead.
What's your message going to be to Netanyahu tomorrow?
Well, we're working on a lot of things with Israel, and one of the things is probably a permanent deal with Iran. In other words, they have to give up all of the things that you know so well. The attack turned out, according to every single atomic energy commission, that was a complete and total obliteration. And we had the pilots, as you know, at the White House on Friday. They were incredible. And they confirmed that. They know better than anybody, by the way, but they confirmed that. Every bomb hit its mark perfectly. And they would have to start all over again at a different location. This one is, the word I used was the correct word, obliteration.
What would your message be on Gaza to Netanyahu?
I think we're close to a deal on Gaza. We could have it this week.
Democrats are claiming more federal cuts for the debts over in Texas.
Yeah, go ahead.
Mr. President,
yeah, I think there's a good chance we have a deal with Hamas during the coming week, pertaining to quite a few of the hostages. Yeah. You know, we've gotten a lot of the hostages out, but pertaining to the remaining hostages, quite a few of them will be coming out. We think we'll have that done this week.
Mr. President, do the tariff rates change at all on July 9th, or do they change on August 1st?
What are you talking about?
Tariff rates, do they change on July 9th or August 1st?
No, they're going to be tariffs. The tariffs are going to be the tariffs. I think we'll have most countries done by July 9th, yeah. Either a letter or a deal.
But they go into effect on August 1st. The tariffs go into effect August 1st, but the president is setting the rates and the deals right now.
Okay?
Are you investigating whether some of the cuts to the federal government left key vacancies at the National Weather Service or in the emergency coordination?
No,
they did not.
No, they didn't. I'll tell you, if you look at that what a situation that all is, and that was really the Biden setup. That was not our setup, but I wouldn't blame Biden for it either. I would just say this is a 100-year catastrophe, and it's just so horrible to watch.
Are you planning to visit Texas, Mr. President?
Probably on Friday. We wanted to leave a little time. I would have done it today, but we'd just be in their way. Probably Friday.
Mr. President, have you been briefed on the ship that was hit in the Red Sea? Do you know if the Houthis attacked that ship today?
We'll give you a report sometime tonight or tomorrow.
The D.C. City Council has not approved a new stadium for the Commanders. If they don't approve it, will you step in?
Well, we see what happens. I've been looking at the deal, and I don't blame them. They have to. It's a very important piece of property. It's a great piece of property. So we'll see. But if I can help them out, I will. Ultimately, we control that. The federal government ultimately controls it, so we'll see what happens. I saw the plans. I saw the stadium. The owner's very, very successful and a very good man. I know him a little bit. And it would be a great place for the NFL to be there, I can tell you that. So if they want to negotiate a little tough, that's okay with me.
Would you see the Commanders change the name back to Redskins?
Well, you want me to make a controversial statement? I would. I wouldn't have changed the name. But that's there. It just doesn't have the same. It doesn't have the same ring to me. But, you know, winning can make everything sound good. So if they win, all of a sudden the Commander sounds good. But I wouldn't have changed the name. Say it.
Why not help Ukraine the same way you helped Israel?
I am helping Ukraine. I'm helping it a lot. And it's a war that should have never happened. It's a war that should have never started. If I were president, if the election weren't rigged, and it was rigged so badly, and that's come out. Read Miranda Devine in the New York Post today. The election was totally rigged. And if it weren't rigged, you wouldn't have a war with Russia right now, and you wouldn't have had inflation, and you wouldn't have had the horrible Afghanistan the way they left. Not that they left. We would have been out before them, but the way they left. I think the most embarrassing day in the history of our country. You wouldn't have had the October horror show with Israel and Hamas. You wouldn't have had any of it. You wouldn't have had the recent showdown with Iran. You wouldn't have had any of it. And you wouldn't have had inflation.
Well, you said you had a strategic call with Zelensky the other day. What strategy did you
I thought it was a good call. He's being hit very hard, as I said he would. He's being hit very hard, and I was very disappointed with my call with President Putin. I was very disappointed.
In light of the floods, do you think that the federal government needs to hire back any of the meteorologists who were fired in the last few months?
I wouldn't know that. I really wouldn't. I would think not. This was a thing that happened in seconds. Nobody expected it. Nobody saw it. Very talented people are there, and they didn't see it. It's, I guess they said, once in 100 years. They've never seen anything like this. So I wouldn't, I mean, people are trying to blame the school. They're trying to blame the camp. They're trying to blame. It's just a horrible thing. But no, I wouldn't say that, no.
Are you expecting any deals to be signed this week, and what countries are closest to that?
Well, the president is right in the midst of discussing all sorts of deals with all sorts of countries, and the gentleman to my right is going to decide, and I'm going to be with him when he makes that decision.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
So we've just been listening there to President Trump. He, of course, is leaving New Jersey. He's going to be making his way back to the White House now. CNN senior reporter Betsy Klein is with us. So, Betsy, a few comments, a few questions specifically about the flooding in Texas, questions about both FEMA funding and whether he will continue with those cuts. Also, whether any of the cuts and the vacancies at the National Weather Service may have led to any issues there. The president taking both of those on. What more did we hear from him, Betsy?
That's right. I mean, as we have been tracking the scale and scope of the devastation of this storm, it's been very clear that the full state, local, and federal government is going to need to work together very closely to respond. And we heard from President Trump. He's been in touch with Texas Governor Greg Abbott and other state and local officials. He described these floods as absolutely horrible. He said that the federal government will continue to be there. Now, we know that earlier this morning, the president signed a major disaster declaration for Kerr County, Texas, which really unlocks more aid and response from FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency. When he signed that, he sent a letter to Abbott that said, he wrote in Sharpie, quote, "Our wonderful Secretary Kristi Noem is available at all times." The president said that he himself will visit probably this Friday. Of course, the footprint of a presidential visit can be quite large, so taking caution not to disrupt the ongoing search and rescue efforts right now. We have a little bit more information on the federal response on the ground, according to a Homeland Security official. The U.S. Coast Guard since Friday has been assisting with these search and rescue efforts. There are 3 C-144 fixed-wing aircraft with thermal cameras. That is so important as they are trying to detect movement on the ground. There are 2 MH-65 Dolphin helicopters. There's a guy named Scott Ruskin who is a member of the Coast Guard. He is a swimmer who has been assisting with search and rescue efforts. He has assisted more than 165 people. This is his first mission response, so really notable there. The Coast Guard has assisted with more than 200 rescues so far. FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, has 7 shelters that are now open with food and water. As of 1 o'clock, the official told me 137 people are staying in those shelters. That is expected to grow. They are deploying additional assets to the area. The president has been talking about phasing out FEMA. He said that is something we can talk about later.
Yeah. Betsy, really appreciate the updates. Thank you. Stay with us. We're going to fit in a quick break here. We'll be right back. You're watching CNN Newsroom. They are dealing with in terms of the debris and the areas that they're searching. Dozens across the state remain missing. We've talked a lot about Camp Mystic, of course, which is in Hunt, Texas. At this point, officials say 10 girls and 1 counselor from Camp Mystic are still missing. That is one of a number of camps located along the river. CNN's Maribel Gonzalez is joining us now. So Maribel, you, I want to point out too, you're there on the side of the road, you're in Kerrville. You have also been getting these alerts that our other colleagues have been getting in the area. Did you have to evacuate anywhere?
Yeah, Erica, those alerts have been ongoing throughout the afternoon. We actually had to move several times because we weren't allowed access into certain areas. And then here in Kerrville, this is as close as we can get to the Guadalupe River that is just behind the building, that brown building that you're seeing on camera. Now that rain, Erica, is complicating the search and rescue efforts. Here in Kerrville, this entire road was filled with first responders, with the vehicles of volunteers. We even saw locals trying to get to that riverbank by horse. This was right before we got that emergency alert that said there was a high confidence of flooding. As you can see now, there's just but a few of those vehicles here because everybody left. They're very sensitive, as we can imagine, to the threat of additional flooding, especially given how quickly the water levels of the Guadalupe River rose during the early morning hours on Friday. Now, we were here yesterday just on the other side along the river. That is where an RV park used to be. And I say used to because that flash flooding, it completely destroyed it. There is nothing left. There were 200-year-old trees that were uprooted. The plumbing of the RV park completely uprooted. And on the river, there were slabs of concrete. There was even a car wedged between the downed trees. So as you can imagine, this is adding more difficulty to those search efforts, especially if the people that are on the ground have to clear out because of the threat of more flooding. That further delays the possibility of finding people hopefully alive, but otherwise, you know, the bodies of the victims of this flooding. But I will tell you, Erica, what we've been hearing all throughout the day is despite these obstacles, despite the weather, and despite the time that has passed by, the last thing that people here say they are going to lose is hope.
Yeah, which is so important. Maribel, appreciate it. Thank you. Well, as we just heard from Maribel, there are these concerns about the risk of flash flooding in the area now increasing. There are watches and warnings in place, alerts hitting people. We have the latest forecast for you ahead right here in the CNN Newsroom.